Sydney records 170 new local COVID cases. National Cabinet has come up with vaccination targets to move Australia through the four-phase plan to reopen the country. Scott Morrison says under the current suppression phase, snap lockdowns will still be on the cards.
The thresholds, which we are announcing tonight, are completely 100% consistent with the scientific modelling.
Australia will move to Phase B when 70% of the eligible population are fully vaccinated, and under Phase C, overseas travel will be back on the cards when we hit 80%.
We will restore inbound passenger caps at previous levels for unvaccinated returning travellers and larger caps for vaccinated returning travellers coming to Australia once we hit Phase B. So that's Australians returning.
Well, Professor Nancy Baxter from the University of Melbourne is here to talk us through what this all means. Professor, 70% vaccination target to get to the next phase where vaccinated people will be under fewer restrictions, 80% to start living without broad lockdowns. Does that sound about right to you?
I mean, it's always hard to know, and this virus does have a way of making all our plans just not quite go as we were hoping. But I think this is reasonable, and it's certainly at least setting a target. It's setting a fairly ambitious target, but it's setting a target that we can all move towards. I think this is motivating, and I think it'll help get people, hopeful that they can see their way out of this.
Professor, nothing changes until we get to that 70% eligible target. At the moment, we're at around 17% eligible. If we keep the current vaccination rate, I think it's about 3 months to get above 70%, but that assumes it stays at that current rate. What's your view? How hard is it going to be to get there?
Well, first of all, I want to say that although nothing changes in that in the steps to get out of the current situation, a lot will change when we're even at 40, 50, 60%, because we'll be less likely to go into lockdowns because it will have less transmission happening with more of the population protected and vaccinated. So there may not be a change in from suppression to transition or from transition to consolidation, but in terms of the phases that Scott Morrison talked about. But I think that things will change and we'll be experiencing less lockdowns. But is that going to be challenging to achieve? Yes, it is going to be challenging to achieve. And although Scott Morrison didn't talk about Canada as one of the countries that we can look to, being Canadian, I always do talk about Canada. And I just looked it up. And so May 11th, Canada only had 40% of its population having won the first vaccine. And within 2 months, it got to nearly 70%. So this is the kind of thing that you can do. So we can get from 40% with one dose to 70% with one dose in 2 months. And that's the kind of thing we need to kind of focus on, and we need to start galvanizing everyone to do. The second dose will take longer. So I don't know how long this will take, 2 or 3 months, but it could be done as quickly as that if we have the supply and if we have the will.
Do you think that this will motivate people to get the jab? And what does it mean for those who refuse it?
Well, I absolutely think it's motivating because, it does set a target. And it'll appeal to people in terms of their community spirit, in terms of getting us to that number so that we can move on from this. What will that mean for people who won't get vaccinated? Well, I do think that there are going to start to be things you can do if you're vaccinated and things you can't do if you're unvaccinated. And I think that will likely change some of the unvaccinated folks, their opinion and their willingness to get vaccinated. Sometimes these things do take time, and I think we need to, be open to conversations with people who are hesitant about the vaccine. There are a lot of people who are hesitant about the vaccine, and it's important that we engage them, find out what their issues are, and talk them through it. But certainly, I think that many countries are on the way to 80% vaccinated, and I think Australia can get there too. We actually have more vaccine acceptance here than many of the other countries who are doing well with vaccination. We haven't politicized the vaccine, which is extremely important. We see low vaccine uptake rates in the United States in many states, and that's largely because of the politicization of the vaccine, which is a real tragedy.
Well, on other countries, the UK has been roundly criticised for opening up too early at 70%. Should we be watching intently to see what happens there?
Well, it's 70% fully with one dose. It's not 70% with both doses, so that's important to note. Well, I think the UK is doing an experiment. It's not an experiment that if I were the Prime Minister of the UK that I would do, but that's Boris Johnson's choice. And I think what we're going to be able to do is learn from that. So I think that what we need to really do is learn by example and not experience on this. We have a lot of countries that are starting to open up with varying percentage of their population vaccinated. And what we can do is actually see what happens. When the Netherlands tried to open at 50%, they had some major outbreaks and had to close again. Singapore also had to increase restrictions again. So I think we can look at what the rates are at various countries, and that'll give us some confidence that the 70% is the right to loosen up, and 80% is the right rate to kind of really open up. We'll have lots of evidence by the time we're there, and we should use it.
Professor Nancy Baxter, always great to have you on the show. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
From expert opinions to in-depth analysis and reporting, the Project YouTube brings you the biggest stories from Australia and around the globe. Hit the subscribe button now for news delivered straight to your feed.